to many of us, called the Shama'il Muhammadiyah, the characteristics of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in this book, he included a narration which forms the basis, it forms the foundation for how we come to understand the physical appearance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this hadith is narrated to us by a woman named Ma'bad. And Ma'bad is someone that simply had a tent, and she sold food and provision to travelers. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he was on the journey of Hijrah, the famous migration, and he was with Abu Bakr radiallahu anh and their guide, they ran out of provision and they happened to stop at the tent of Ma'bad. And so they came and they said, "Do you have any food? Do you have any meat, any dates, anything that we can take?" And she said, "I wish that I did, but I'm completely out. I have nothing left to give you." So the Prophet ﷺ, he looks around and he sees a sheep off to the side. And he says, "What about this sheep? Does it have any milk?" And she says, "If it had milk, I would give you the milk, but this sheep is old, it's tired, it's fatigued. It hasn't produced milk in ages." And so he goes to the sheep, he puts his hand on the udder, he takes the name of Allah, and the udder fills with milk. So he tells Ma'bad, "Bring a container," and they fill the container with milk. And then each of them takes turns and they drink to their fill. Then they fill the container again. And the Prophet and Abu Bakr and their guide, they go on their way. After some time, the husband of Ma'bad comes home. And he comes and he sees this container of milk. And he says, "Where did this milk come from? This sheep hasn't produced milk in how long? Where did you get this?" And she said, "A most blessed man came today. He was a man whose face was radiant and bright, luminous. We can say it was full of nur. He was a man that was neither thin nor fat. He was elegant, he was handsome. He was someone, his eyes were blackish, his eyelashes were long. His voice was pleasant. He had a thick beard and long eyebrows. He was dignified when he was silent. And when he spoke, his speech was splendid and magnificent. He was the most handsome and pleasant of people from afar. And he was the most dignified and the best of them up close. He was someone whose speech was sweet. It was neither curt and short, nor did he speak unnecessarily and ramble. But his words were like the beads of a necklace, every single word falling perfectly into its place. He was someone that was of medium height, neither tall nor short. He was the most brilliant of his companions in appearance. And when he spoke, they listened attentively. And when he gave in a command, they executed it immediately. And Abu Ma'bad, he hears this and he says, "This must be the man the Quraysh told us about. I must go and accompany him." Now there's two very fascinating things about this particular hadith. The first is that in any normal circumstance, the fact that you have a sheep that has not produced milk in a long time and is weak and fatigued and tired, and you come home and all of a sudden there's a container full of milk is miraculous. And under any normal circumstance, that would be the miracle, that would be the topic of conversation when your spouse comes home. That you would not believe what happened. The sheep that hasn't produced milk suddenly produced milk. But that was not the topic of conversation. Because the mere interaction, the mere moment of meeting and seeing the Prophet ﷺ was far more captivating. And that second most fascinating thing was that this description that forms the basis by which we understand the appearance of the Prophet ﷺ did not come from someone that met him regularly, but this was the only time that Ma'bad saw the Prophet ﷺ. And so in that brief moment, they're traveling, they're on a journey, they're escaping the Quraysh, they're trying to set up a new life in Medina. They have a lot of things going on. And yet in this small passing moment in the journey, literally a rest stop, a transformative moment happens. And when we look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, we not only find a multitude of examples where a small moment had a powerful impact in the life of someone else, but we actually find that it is a sunnah that he has recommended, that he has encouraged us to take advantage of small ways, small moments, to generate a powerful impact in the life of somebody else. The Prophet ﷺ once came to Mu'adh bin Jabal radiallahu anhu. And he came to Mu'adh and he said, Ya Mu'adh, by Allah, I love you. By Allah, I love you. Please don't ever forget that at the end of every prayer you should make this dua. Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. Oh Allah, allow me to remember you and to thank you and to worship you in the best of ways. Now when he comes and he prefaces with this intro, first of all we know that whatever the Prophet ﷺ taught, by way of worship or du'as or anything like that, the companions would jump to learn it and to practice it. And yet in this situation, this advice is prefaced, Ya Mu'adh, by Allah, I love you. Now what impact would that have on Mu'adh radiallahu anhu? That the instruction that is now to follow this preface, this introduction, will be something coming from a genuine place of love, of care, of concern, of the Prophet ﷺ genuinely telling him something that he wants him to practice, because it will be best for Mu'adh to practice this. So he told him, never leave it off. A small moment, but a powerful impact. One time, Anas ibn Malik, he said that we were with the Prophet ﷺ, and there was a man with us, and another man went passing by, and the man that was with us said, Ya Rasulullah, I love that man for the sake of Allah. He said, have you told him? He said, no. He said, then go and tell him. Go and tell him. And if you've ever had that type of a friendship with someone, where someone sends you a text message and says that there's nothing going on, I just wanted to tell you, I love you for the sake of Allah. No matter how difficult of a day you're having, no matter what type of stresses you are dealing with in your life at that moment, whatever hardships you may be going through, that small, innocuous text message, it has an impact. It uplifts our day. It brightens our outlook. And it's something that stands out. It's something that we remember. We may exchange thousands of text messages and forget all of them, not be able to recall any of them. But that one where someone says, I love you for the sake of Allah, we remember it. And so he encouraged us. If you love someone for the sake of Allah, then go and tell them. Because that small moment of telling them is something that will have a powerful impact in the life of someone else. And he even taught us, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, do not deem any act to be insignificant. For even greeting your brother with a cheerful face is a sunnah, is an act of worship. Greeting someone with a smiling face is an act of worship. We deal and we come across so many people throughout the course of a day, at school, at work, at the store. We interact with dozens, if not more people every single day. And we don't know what people are dealing with. We don't know what people are going through. And yet we're taught a very simple and a very significant sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, which is that when you interact with someone, be someone that brings happiness, someone that brings some type of positivity into their life. Someone feels better about their day because they interacted with you for a brief moment. It's something that helped them. It's something that gave them a better outlook, at least for that day. He also taught us, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that the person that has not thanked the people has not thanked Allah. And so he's taught us one way that we brighten, that one way that we uplift others is by thanking them. And we know, and we've all been in that situation where when someone recognizes something that we've done, when someone is appreciative of hard work or effort that we put into something, and they recognize that, how that makes us feel. How much we want to continue to act in that way, to do things like that, that bring that response in people. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he says, one time I noticed that the Prophet ﷺ went to go and relieve himself. And I thought that when he comes back, he's going to need to make wudu. So I went and I prepared the water and I left the water there for him, and then I left. I prepared the water and then I left. And when he came back and he made wudu, he inquired, who is the person that left this water for me? And when he was told that it was Ibn Abbas, he said, اللهم فقهه في الدين وعلمه تأويل. Oh Allah, grant him understanding of this religion and teach him its interpretation. And Ibn Abbas, as we know, is someone that has a reputation among the companions as being someone that had a deep understanding of the explanation of the Quran. And how did that dua come about? Ibn Abbas, in a small moment, just did a small act of kindness. And in return, he made dua for him. And this is something that we underrate and we overlook and we cast aside as being cliche, making dua for one another. We don't make dua for ourselves enough. But think, how much dua do we make for other people? How much dua do we make as a means of thanking someone that did something for us? These are small moments, small things that don't require much effort on our parts, and yet they can have a profound and tremendous impact in the life of someone else. See, when we look at the way that we internalize memories, the way that we remember events, we tend to remember very positive things or very negative things. So if you go to a restaurant to celebrate your anniversary, for example, the food may have been average, the service may have been average, everything may have just been very average and forgettable. But when they come out at the end of the dinner and they present to you a chocolate cake that you didn't order and they write happy anniversary and give you a little card and make a little show of it, you walk away remembering the entire event as something positive. So that one positive memory of them giving you this unexpected little gift makes the whole event seem in your mind, when you recall it, positive. Even if you don't remember what you ordered, even if you don't remember all the little minute by minute recollection of the entire dinner, but that one positive memory of that cake seals the deal. On the flip side, a negative memory can do the same thing. If you've ever taken a child to a theme park, Disney or Universal or something like that, what happens? You plan, you buy tickets, you go on every single ride, you get fast pass, you eat all the nice meals, you take them to the gift shop at the end of the day to get gifts. You do anything and everything you possibly can from 10 in the morning until 10 at night to make sure that your child had the best time possible. And then what happens on the way to the car? You walk by that little seller with the glow-in-the-dark necklaces for $1 each, and your kid says, I want that necklace. And you say, oh, forget it, let's go. We've already done enough. And you get to the car and the kid is doing what? They're crying. I had a bad day because I didn't get the glow-in-the-dark necklace. And we become very aggravated. Like, we just did this whole amazing day, and you're fixated on this little necklace, this little glow-in-the-dark toy. But that's the way our mind works. Maybe as adults, we have a more mature way of manifesting that, but it's still the same thing. We tend to lock in sometimes on a very negative memory and let that paint the picture of the entire event. Jabir bin Samur radiallahu anh, he says, when I was a child, I accompanied the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam after Dhuhr prayers. He said, we would go pray Dhuhr, and then as kids we would just walk with him back to his home. And as we're walking, he's just kind of playing and messing with the kids, and he goes, I will never forget. He was passing his hands over the heads of the children. And I will never forget, the fragrance of his hand was more beautiful than any fragrance I had ever smelled in my life before. And so think, this very small, innocuous passing moment, creating such a positive reinforcement of what memory? Of going to the masjid. That as an adult, he's reminiscing. I still remember that one time I smelled the hand of the Prophet ﷺ. And we connect the dots and contrast to the experiences many of us have when we come to the masajid. And another, Jabir bin Samur, he tells us something else very interesting. Someone asked him that, did you ever used to just sit and hang out with the Prophet ﷺ? And he said, yes. He said, we would pray Fajr, then they would sit until the sun came up, and he goes, and then the Prophet and his companions, they would sit and they would talk. And they would remember the days of Jahiliyyah. And they would recite poetry to one another, and they would laugh, and they would have a good time. So he's reminiscing that they used to just literally sit and hang out. They used to sit and just have fun and entertain and exchange conversation. That was what he remembered about his experience sitting with the Prophet ﷺ. We think about how many times we want to spend quality time with friends or quality time with family. And we tend to then set the bar very high as to what quality time looks like. And we're learning from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ himself. The quality time doesn't have to be something very extravagant or very difficult. It's simply sitting and just spending time with one another. Those are the things that people remember. You know, when someone passes away, it's very interesting, it's very intriguing how someone is remembered after they pass away. And what people say about them. And people will say things like, that brother or that sister was always smiling. That person was always going out of their way to help other people. That person was always very generous. That person gave everything they had to their family. If there's a medical doctor, please, there's an emergency in the back. Okay, I think we have it covered, inshallah. When we reminisce about how people remember people that have passed away, they say things like, that person was always smiling, they were always generous, they gave everything they had to their family. And when people say things like that, they're not looking at one major event. There's not one major incident that causes someone to be remembered in such a manner, but rather it is a repetition of small incidents, a repetition of small events that shapes that reputation of somebody. And so we think how that applies to how we interact on a regular basis, especially with those close to us. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu, he was in the service of the Prophet ﷺ since he was a child. He said, I served the Prophet ﷺ for 10 years. And never in that 10 years did I ever hear him say, uff. Did I ever hear him express any annoyance or displeasure or say, why did you do this thing or why didn't you do that thing? The simple absence of a negative moment is what stood out. Because as we know, it's very easy to get frustrated, especially with children, when we have to tell them the same thing over and over and over again. And we express our frustration, we express our annoyance. And Anas radiallahu anhu, he's saying that I never heard him do that even once. And he also tells us a story, and listen carefully to how he words it. He says, by Allah, the Prophet ﷺ had the most perfect character. One time he gave me an errand to run. And I told him, Ya Rasulullah, I'm going to go and do this errand. I'm not going to get distracted and I'll be right back. And he says, I went, and as I passed by the marketplace, I saw a bunch of kids playing, and I did what kids do. And I began playing with them as well, and I forgot about the errand. He said, I'm playing, and all of a sudden I feel a hand on my back. And I turn around and I see the Prophet ﷺ smiling. And he asked me, did you do that thing that I told you to do? And Anas says, yes, I'm going right now, I'm going right now. And he ran off to go finish the errand. But look how he began the story. By Allah, the Prophet ﷺ had the most perfect character. And what story does he connect to the perfect character? That in this one moment when I forgot to do his errand, he didn't reprimand me. He didn't yell at me. He just smiled and said, did you do it? And then I ran to go do it. And from that one moment, he tells that story that the Prophet ﷺ had the best character. And so we see from his life ﷺ, the way that he has encouraged us to smile at people, the way that he encouraged us to thank people, the way that he's encouraged us and shown us through his example how we should focus on creating positive memories and positive associations for people that are around us, people that we interact with on a daily basis, not to deem any of these acts as insignificant, but things that empower us, that we can have a powerful impact in the life of someone else by following these very small actions. وَأَقُولُ قَوْلِي هَذَا أَسْتَغْفِرُ لِي وَلَكُمْ فَاسْتَغْفِرُوهُ إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. If I could please ask everyone to move in closer one more time. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anh, he tells us yet another story. And what's very interesting, I've mentioned a number of stories by Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anh. He's someone that accompanied the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was with him a lot. And so it's very interesting that not only does he have a first-person viewpoint to many of these incidents, but if something was amiss, he would have pointed it out. And that's something that for me is a miracle of the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We look at any other human being, any other leader, any other type of individual. And in those small moments when things are tough, when we're frustrated, when we're annoyed, right? We give in a little bit to that frustration. We tend to give in to that anger. We might not overreact, we might not go overboard, but we give into it a little bit. We give in a little bit. And Anas is telling us that I never even saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam give in a little bit. And that's what it means when we hear, for example, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, that he had the most perfect character. It wasn't just that he had good character, but it was that he implemented and acted upon that good character in every single moment. Think how difficult that is. Every single moment, no matter how he's pushed, how he's prodded, he always acted with the most perfect conduct, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Anas tells us this story about a very special friendship that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had. He says that there was a man by the name of Zahir. And Zahir was a man of the wilderness. And so he didn't live in the city, he lived out in the wilderness. And he said that when he would come and visit Medina, he would bring with him gifts of the wilderness. And so he would bring plants, he would bring vegetation, he would bring food. Things that were not available in the city, he would bring them and then he would gift them to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said in turn, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would collect things from the city, food and plants and things that were unique to Medina, and he would gift them to Zahir when he was leaving. And so Anas says that they had this beautiful relationship, this friendship. They would meet and they would exchange gifts. And now Anas, he tells us that Zahir was a man that was not very handsome. This is how Anas delicately puts it. That he was a man that was not very handsome. So one time, the Prophet ﷺ saw Zahir in the marketplace. And he went up behind him and he grabbed him. And Zahir says, "Who is this? Who's grabbed me? Let go, let go." And he's, fighting him. And then he sees out of the corner of his eye that it is the Prophet ﷺ. And so he says, when I noticed that it was the Prophet, I immediately let go and tried to just put my body against his, just so I could be close to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet didn't let go yet. And he's joking around. They're friends. And so the Prophet ﷺ announces, he says, "Who would like to purchase this slave? Who would like to purchase this slave?" And Zahir's mood immediately changes. And he says, "Ya Rasulullah, this is defective merchandise. This is defective merchandise. You're not going to get much value for this. You're not going to get anyone to pay you too much." And that's a very small statement, but it's a very big window into how Zahir was feeling at that moment. Or maybe how Zahir viewed himself in that moment. And the Prophet ﷺ immediately responded and said, "No, rather, in the eyes of Allah, you are not defective merchandise, but you are someone that is very valuable. You are someone that is very valuable in the sight of Allah." Now imagine that no matter how you feel, if the Prophet ﷺ comes and tells you that in the sight of Allah you are valuable, that will literally transform your entire life. It will transform the outlook that you have of the world for the rest of your life. With that small statement, just picking up on what happened and what Zahir was saying, and immediately turning back around and saying that you are someone that is valuable in the sight of Allah. And what we learn from that is that one of the sunnahs, one of the practices of the Prophet ﷺ was how he came to uplift people. And think how many interactions we have with people on a day-to-day basis. How many WhatsApp messages we exchange, how many comments we leave online, how many people we talk to. And when we talk and when we exchange messages, what is our attitude? What is our intention? What is our demeanor? What is our attitude? Is it one of one-upping or making ourselves look better or putting someone else down? Or is it one of sincerely looking at somebody else and figuring out how can I lift somebody else up? That was the example that the Prophet ﷺ set. And it is an example that is admittedly difficult to follow. It is hard to think like that at all times, and that is why he had the best character. But he taught us that example. That when we look around and we see all of these difficulties, all these tragedies, all these major problems, and we say, there's big problems, they need big solutions, and I don't know what I can do. And we feel overwhelmed. And we say that there's so much stuff happening, what's the point of me even doing anything about it? But we're taught from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that there are small ways, that small things everybody can do, that are small to us, that are innocuous to us, that we might even forget that we did, and yet they carry a tremendous amount of meaning for someone else. How many of us, our lives were shaped by someone telling us, you're really good at X, you're really talented at this thing, and maybe it was something that we didn't think that we were good at, or that we were talented at. And it may have changed the course of the career that we pursued, or whatever that, something that we pursued in life. And you go back some years later and you tell that person, do you remember when you told me that you saw this strength in me? Well, that changed my life, and I went and I did this and that and that. And that person says, I don't even remember saying it. I don't even remember saying it. Because for them it was something small, it was something in passing. But for the person on the receiving end, it was something that was very powerful and very transformative. And so we learn from the example of the Prophet ﷺ how to capitalize small things that we can do that have a powerful impact in the lives of other people. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على آل إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين في كل مكان وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وإقام الصلاة.